A really great way to break up a page with lots of text is to use a technique called the pull quote. Here's an example. Here's a page of a lot of lorem ipsum, and I've highlighted this section in bold that I want to be in the pull quote. And when the JavaScript runs using the DOM, it pulls out this span and it displays it here in the pull quote. Now the beauty of this is if the user has JavaScript turned off, the pull quote won't display, but the text is still there inside the main block of the text. So we've kept the basic premise that we always have the information in the content in the main HTML page, and if we do JavaScript, that's like an extra layer on top. Now granted, with a JavaScript the user gets a much better experience, but they don't lose the essential information if they have JavaScript turned off. So let's go in and take a look and see how this is done. First we're going to look at the HTML page, and this is pullquote.html. But the first thing we do is we pull in the JavaScript code. So this is an external JavaScript file called pullquote.js. And then we've done some styling. And if you go down through the page, you can see that the quote that I wanted is surrounded with a span tag. Now I also put a bold around it in order so it would show out on the demonstration page. You normally wouldn't do that on a regular page. So I set up this span. Now what the span tag does is it allows a quote or a section to be highlighted. If I had done this as a div tag, it would have made a new block, but by making it a span tag, it keeps it inside the paragraph. And I use the class, which I can repeat many times throughout the web page. I call it pullQuote. Now notice that this is a lowercase q. Normally with my naming conventions I would make this an uppercase q, but as I'm using Robert Johansson's code, he designated all lowercase, so I kept it all lowercase to match his JavaScript code. And then here's my end span. And that's the only changes I've made to the web page. Now, what the JavaScript is going to do is it's going to go through the DOM, the document object model of this entire page, and it's going to look for every span tag that has a class of pullQuote. It'll put those in an array and step through each one and create a new entity or a new paragraph that can be styled. So let's go and look at that JavaScript. So looking at pullQuote JavaScript, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, and you can see on the very last line that there's a function called add event. And this is how we're going to add this event or this action to happen when the web page starts. This is from a contest that's listed out on the Quirks Mode page. So you can see that Robert Johansson wrote the pullQuote demo, but he also went out to the Quirks Mode page and borrowed this code for adding an event. And I'm not going to go through this adding an event. That would be more in the events handling section. But just, I have a reference to the web page if you want to go out and read more about it and read people's comments. Go ahead and do that. But basically this adds the event of the pull quotes to the web page. So here's the actual function by itself. We're going to start out with a pull quote. And the very first thing you want to do when you work with a DOM is to double check the browser to make sure it can handle that. Now in the old days we would sniff out to see what browser was being used, and then we'd say, well, if this is IE3 then do this, if it's another browser do this. And that quickly became outdated as the browsers were changed and their names changed. So this new technique is much better. And basically, we're going to use from the DOM, we're going to use several functions from the DOM, and we're going to test for each one of those. Here's some of the functions. We're going to get element by ID, we're going to create an element, and we're going to append a child. This is how we build that pull quote block. And what we do is we try that function, and if it returns a false, we're basically going to say, if this returns false, then leave this function. We'll basically return false. So we're kind of making a shortcut saying, hey, if you don't understand these three or four functions, then you can't run this stuff and go away. We're telling that to the browser. Now, this exclamation mark means not or the reverse of. And these two pipe symbols means or. So we say, can you understand get element by ID, or can you understand get element, or can you understand append child? And if any one of those are false, then we send the browser on its way. On the next line, we set up several variables to hold our information, and you can see that they're named, giving them so you know exactly what's contained in each one. And then we go out and we find all our pull quotes. So here we're going to look for all our span tags, and in the example that I'm using, we only have one span tag, and we're going to save that in an array of elements. Then we set up a thing called a regular expression. Now, a regular expression is just basically a super search or a super find. And here we're saying, look at the beginning for the word pull quote. So we're going to look through this list, this array of elements that we got from the getElements tag. So we're going to look at our list of span tags, and we're going to see if any of them has a pull quote as part of it. And let me go back to our pull quote. So we're basically going to be looking for this right here. And then we're going to go through our list. So if we have several pull quotes on a page, this will handle all of them. We're going to look at the first element. And if it matches and has the word pull quote in it, now there might be several span tags on the page that aren't pull quotes. There's some other span. But if they match our regular expression or they have the word pull quote in it, then we're going to create a new element, and we're going to call it block quote. We're going to give it a class name, and then we're going to make it into a p tag. So now we have a paragraph with our quote inside of it, but it's just hanging out in memory. So we want to add this, we want to insert this into the DOM. So for each of these child nodes, we basically append their child, and we basically take that paragraph and add it right into the DOM in the memory. Now we're not changing the actual text on the web page, we're only changing the memory. And here we can see where we actually append it in using the append child. And then we insert it right before the span element of the parent.